Amy and Winona. And I didn't get anything from Sarah about appointing anybody for them in their stead, in her stead. So I'm going to go ahead and have Winona sit in. Is that okay, Winona?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
All right. Only because Amy's also doing the secretarial work, so I didn't want to double burden her. Oh, never mind, Winona, you're kicked off. Brief moment in the sun.
Oh, darn.
I can move on to public comment. Do we have anyone in the audience who wants to speak? We have Sean Murphy, acting as concerned citizen or town treasurer.
Concerned citizen always. I'd ask the Board of Finance to take a second look at capital line item C3.03. I'm sorry, yeah, that's 0.04, town building maintenance. I think if you look at the existing balance in that account, that there won't be a need to add an additional $20,000 to it. This wasn't, according to the audit, it was not used up in fiscal year 2021. There was a $6,700 balance and they added 20,000 to it. This year, nothing was put into that account. And I would ask that you consider the look at your profit and loss statement and consider the outstanding balance that's in that account still. And I think you'll find that there's no reason to be applying additional funds to this account. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Anyone else in the audience? How about online? Sally Timmons, you are recognized. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, Sally Timmons, 22 Pinecrest Road. I just have a brief comment to make. I attended the March 9th Board of Finance meeting and made a comment in support of the Board of Education budget. Later, upon reviewing the minutes from that meeting, they reflect that no public comments were made. I realize that this could have been an error, but as someone who doesn't go to a lot of Board of Finance meetings, it definitely made me question, my confidence and also the transparency of the budget process itself. I realize that you're not always going to agree with the comments that folks make, but I would hope that they are taken into account and at the very minimum that the input would be documented. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Was your comment made as a written comment in the chat section or?
No, I attended the meeting in person and made a comment in person.
Okay. I'm sorry that was not noted. Anyone else? Roseanne, you are recognized. Just unmute yourself, please.
Sure, thank you. Roseanne Salisbury, 251 Northwest Corner Road. I'm just want to echo Sally's comment. I was not able to attend the Board of Finance meeting on March 9th, but I did send in a written comment via email and noticed that that was not read or included in the minutes either. It was also in support of the Board of Ed budget. So I just wanted to point that out as well.
Who was that comment sent to?
It was sent to Christine Wagner, and I believe she forwarded it on to the Board of Finance. So again, could be just an oversight or error, but.
Can you send that to Christine right now?
Yes,
So
I will.
it's C Dias, C for Christine, D is in David, I A S is in Sam at northstoningtonct.gov.
Okay. Can you just give me the beginning part again?
C for Christine, D for David, I A S for Sam.
Yep, I'll send that along in a second. Thank you.
Thank you, Roseanne. What's that? No, no, there won't, it wouldn't be. There's the comments themselves would not be written into the minutes. The whoever's provided the comment is usually included in the minutes.
It depends on the board. There's no requirement to include public comment, whether who made it or what it was in the minutes. It doesn't need to be in there.
Okay.
We don't do it for Board of Selectmen's meetings.
I know that, I think we've had it in the minutes of if someone spoke up, not necessarily what they said.
Yeah, it's probably worth an agenda item at a future meeting because we've done it and then we stopped doing it.
Yeah, I think, Mike, what I've seen, what we've approved in our minutes is, yeah, you're right. Who might have said a comment, but not necessarily the content. But if we missed something that someone did speak, I'm not sure if we would go back to amend approved minutes or just take that note that we would do better in the future.
Yes, I think we're not going to amend the minutes if we're not really necessarily putting comment, but everyone, if their voice was not heard because we didn't read something when they submitted something to us for public comment, then that's not a good thing, obviously. And we will certainly allow that comment to be read into the board today, once we get it.
Yeah, I can't get onto my email right now, but I know Christine had sent me something at just, before a meeting in the past. I don't know if it was Sally's comments or not, but I didn't see those and didn't read them. But her and I interacted, and Christine did speak at that meeting that night. I'm not sure if those feelings were noted during her comments, but yeah, we can try to get this better, more streamlined in the future for sure.
With the board's consent, once this comes in, we'll allow it to be read. I did to go on to the reviewing the minutes. And before we go on to any substantive talks about the budget, we should hear Roseanne's comment. We can discuss the ARPA funds, but anything that her comment is germane to, we'll wait until we hear that comment before we have any further discussions. Does that sound good, everybody? Okay.
Sounds good, Mike.
Review the previous minutes. I know that Christine sent out minutes. Did everyone have a chance to review those?
I have, yes.
Yep, that's is that from the March 9th meeting, or is that the 1/16?
I think it was the 16th.
Okay, yep, got it. Yeah, I did review it as well earlier. And I think it pretty much, the poll, with just our discussions, I think it's pretty accurate that of what we talked about. We had a poll vote. Most people said they wanted to keep it at closing the $213,000 gap. I'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, so where did we leave public comments? Because didn't Joe Gross speak at that meeting? Do we have to note who speaks at public comments, or how does it work? Okay.
It's for our purposes, but it's not for public.
Sorry, Amy, I really can't hear you. What was that?
I was under the impression that we are to keep public comment private to the meeting and not to keep anything from anyone. I'm new at this, and
That's what I understood. So I wasn't putting names.
Right.
Yeah, I guess we,
Well, I don't recall Joe speaking at the last meeting, and I think it was the meeting before that.
Okay. Okay.
So, that no one spoke early in the night, and then Sean Murphy and Bob Carlson did speak afterwards. And I mean, we can certainly put it on on the agenda for future agenda items to discuss what we want to do. But I think right now, just, Amy, it's who talked, who gave comment, and that's it.
Yeah, we also do record these meetings, so if somebody's interested in all of the content for the meeting, they can go back and watch them.
Good point.
yeah, very good.
So let me make a motion, we accept them as written.
Okay, you have a second? Okay, that's Gary and Carl. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so we have 6-0-0. Do you have the comment? I want you to go ahead and,
So the comment is for Roseanne. As a parent with 2 children in the North Stonington school system, I am fully supportive of the proposed education budget. It is readily apparent that the Board of Education has worked hard to cut or keep the budget constant whenever possible and have only made necessary increases. Our schools are an integral part of the town, and reasonable increases such as the one proposed are essential to providing the teachers and administrators the tools they need to provide a high quality of education to our children.
well said, Roseanne, and thank you for your comment. On to the ARPA request approval.
Thanks, Mike. The Board of Selectmen have one request at this point. At the meeting of the Board of Selectmen on March 22nd, 2022, the following uses of American Rescue Plan funds were approved. The Board of Selectmen now requests the Board of Finance to review these uses and vote to approve or reject these allocations. Loss of public sector revenue, $15,000. Under the final rule, Treasury allows up to $10 million in revenue loss for each municipality due to the public health emergency not to exceed the overall amount awarded. These funds must be used for government services. The Board of Selectmen plans to use these funds for the recreation programs for the community of residents of all ages. One of the needs identified at the community conversation was wellness and mental health and recreation. We'd like to offer these programs to those who need them. The total ARPA fund request is $15,000. So to just summarize that written report I just read, the rec department came to the Board of Selectmen, so they'd like to do something for people in town that maybe can't always afford rec programs. We know sometimes rec, if you have multiple children, can get pretty expensive. And they wanted to have something that they could put out in free of charge using funds from the ARPA funding. So the Board of Selectmen agreed, especially with the feedback we got from the community conversation on trying to do more towards recreation, mental health and wellness. And we thought it was a good place to put $15,000 of funding. This still leaves us funding to be used down the road, but it was something that came to our attention and we wanted to bring it to your attention. So since it's $15,000, we don't have to go to a town meeting, but we do have to come to the Board of Finance.
So just so the audience and the board's clear and anyone at home, we've already allocated $1 million, right, to go to the town meeting and likely a referendum for that.
Yes, that's going to go to a future town meeting and followed by a referendum.
And we have additional monies on top that have not been allocated.
If you allocate this $15,000, I think it leaves us with about $140,000 of unallocated funds.
Okay. Well, I'll entertain a motion and then a second, and then we'll have discussion. Anyone want to give a motion? Gary?
Make a motion, we approve it as requested.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Thank you, Dan. Discussion.
So Bob, this is Paul. This is just, so nothing specific for these funds to be earmarked for, just for the recreation department?
Right, so they know there's people in town that don't always participate in recreation because of the cost. And they wanted to make sure they had some programs for some of those people to attend. It's a touchy situation because people don't always come and up and say to, the rec department, I'd love to have my son or daughter do this, but I can't afford it. There's a lot of pride. It's not an easy thing to do. But through the help of maybe Mrs. Costanza or other people in town where we can identify and reach out to some people, kept very confidential. But it's going to be, if it's a free of charge program, it could be open to anyone. We're just hoping that we can get some people that typically don't pay to go to these things, maybe start to be able to go to these things. And I know that in the past, there's been some scholarships for summer camp and for rec basketball and so on. But those are typically done on a 1 or 2 basis. And again, someone has to come up and pretty much plead a hardship case, which isn't always easy for people to do. So this kind of just opens the door without having to go through that process.
I think it's an ideal use, Bob. Thanks for the explanation.
Thank you.
Any additional discussion?
I just have a follow-up question. So it sounds like it's a mixture of enabling folks to go to paid events without covering the cost of them having to go to a paid event, plus maybe some free to the whole community events.
Well, they didn't present it that way to us, Sarah. They said that they wanted to have free of charge events.
Oh, okay. So it's free of charge events. Okay.
I think they'll still always have their kind of their scholarship funds. I mean, when I was running rec basketball, I had people come up to me and said, I want my daughter to play, I want my son to play, and we just make it happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And
oh, Christine, go ahead.
Mrs. Costanza also said that people don't always want to have to approach and let people know that they're in need. So she felt that offering it this way would make it so that people weren't having to feel awkward and come forward and say that they needed help attending the programs. And it's not identifying specific spots in particular programs. They want to offer things for a variety of age groups, from little ones all the way up to seniors, programs in town, possibly some local trips like to Fields of Fire for like teenage kids, like different things, just so the funds can help a variety of different people that we might not be touching with the other funds that we've used.
that's great. Thank you.
Any further discussion or questions? Put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes 6-0.
That was easy. Can we talk about another $1 million? No.
Nay.
Move on to our budget discussions, agenda item number 5. Did everyone have a chance to kind of review what was presented?
Yeah, if I could just have a moment, Mike, if you don't mind.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just a moment, please. Yeah, so I think at the last meeting, we all had our straw poll and formal poll that we agreed that we need some $200,000 to close budget shortfalls from operation budgets from last year. I think we asked both boards.
13,307 to be exact.
Thank you, sir. We asked both boards to split that evenly. They both did an amazing job, I think, and came back with the request. So kudos to them, and very excited that we didn't have any issues with the back and forth. So I think they did their job. Now it's kind of up to us to do ours, but I think that perhaps Selectman Carlson might have some other news about what other changes his budget made, but I'll let you run the meeting the way you see fit, but I just wanted to get those comments in there. Thank you, Mike.
Perfect, Paul. Yeah, I couldn't be prouder of the boards for getting it done. I think we still have some work to do tonight, given the present circumstances, but I did have a question for Bob, because I don't have my last version. Can you just take the board through the changes, the reductions, where they came from?
I sent an email. You didn't get that, Mike?
I don't think I did. Did I?
It was forwarded from Paul, I think. So you have to.
Yeah, I try to send as much along as I get.
Okay, yep.
The only reason I say is because and then I don't mind repeating, but the email kind of laid it out on how it went. And I think there might have been some additional revenue we talked about in that same email.
Right. That was the exciting news I was hoping you'd share with us tonight.
Consider it shared.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob.
Is it worth reading it into public, like for the public?
So just so we have it on the record, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, we have a reduction in line C5.01 parking lot resurfacing
That's correct.
of $50,000. You reduced the Wheeler Library ask by 10,000, that's B30.01.
I went from 75 to 65, which was the same as last year's, that we gave to the library, 65,000.
Okay.
And there was one other deduction. There should have been a capital line item on the rolling floor trailer. We discussed that. It turned out that we decided to split that. It was $46,000.
Okay. So at C2.03, the walking floor trailer has been reduced by $46,000 for a total of $106,000. And what's appropriate for discussion tonight is there's been some additional revenue.
And there was also an additional expense. We ratified one of the contracts. I think you see it's in there for around 40, I think it's $4,200. We ratified the ASME contract. So we added 4,200 in for the contract agreement, but we took additional revenue of 101,000 roughly for one of the, we now can go after and tax one of the solar projects in town because they're going to come online in June. And then the second one was for the
Property rent.
income for the 1750 house or the John Galatine house.
Okay. So just to summarize, we have additional revenue, the A1, line A100, general property, and it comes from the Ella Wheeler Solar Project. It's $101,259. And the A5.15 revenue line item, property rent, and specifically it's for the 1750 house at the Hewitt Farm. That's an additional 14,000. So an additional 115,000 in revenue. But there is a reduction of 4,610 for union contract expenses. I think, yeah, I think. Yeah, roughly.
Roughly
110,000.
Right.
Well, it's 109,742 according to my using your beautiful little Excel thing.
I tried to, but I ruined the formulas. So sorry, Christine.
So the
Yeah.
so the 106 and the 109 we'll say is roughly a $215,000 windfall.
Correct. So just so the taxpayer is aware of what the Board of Selectmen did, they gave us back 106,000 in expenses and they added 115,000 or 109,742 in revenues. So let's pause there on the Board of Selectmen. Thank you. And move on to the Board of Education. They also provided.
We're going to be able to go back to that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to give a general overview, Carl.
Okay.
We got Board of education reduction of 106,000. If everyone doesn't know where it is, it's on the last page of the budget they sent out. Did everyone see that? And it's the second section. Because they had prior, the original, like most likely for the original budget, they had reduced it by 42,915 on their own, and then so they had staff retirements at 70,182. I don't know if Christine is, okay. Can you just kind of tell everybody what that is? Sure.
So we have 2 retirements coming. And what we did there was we're hoping we can bring those replacements in at much lower steps. Finding staff right now is really difficult. So we're kind of rolling the dice there. If we can't get them at a lower step, it will put us in a deficit on that line item. That's where we thought we could possibly bring in lower staffing.
Okay. There's definitely retirements happening. It's the hiring at a lower step that's
Right.
that you,
We're feeling we can bring them in lower, newer teachers, younger teachers, maybe.
okay. You had an addition, someone went up a step, maybe? Is that-
Yes.
What's the PD removal total?
So what we did on that sheet where you'll see the PD removed and then going back in.
Yeah.
We just wanted you to kind of see our conversation in that. Initially, we pulled out, we haven't put any additional money into professional development for many, many, many years. The administrators actually stopped asking for it. We need to develop our teachers. It's really, really important. So we decided to put it back in this year, but then when we were asked to cut it out, we cut it out. And then as we went through the progression and found a few other things that we thought we might be able to cut instead, we were able to put most of that professional development back in
I
the
see that.
end.
That makes sense now. School-wide supplies, you've got rid of 16,000.
Yep, we're hoping that we can cover that in at the end of the year this year.
What's the confidence level in that?
I think it's hard to say. It's still just, I mean, we're just still looking even at February's financials, but we think we can do that.
That's different than instructional supplies, right, Christine?
Right.
Right. Those aren't books we're talking about. It's,
No, there are things like paper and pencils and things that the overall school uses and needs to operate.
The stuff that teachers bring in themselves all the
Right.
time.
not instructional supplies. I know there's, I
Crayons,
questioned that.
crayons, things like that, you know.
Yep.
Tuition reduction, RMS, MS, what is that?
So we pay tuition when a student wants to go to the magnet school or chooses to go to VOAG. And just like we did last year with special education, we went forward with the numbers that we absolutely knew to be true. So we went with the exact enrollment that we have now and cut out what we anticipated may happen down the road. We don't know. Those students don't usually indicate where they want to go until May. So if we have any kids come forward, that number could change. But right now, this is what we know to be for sure.
Okay. Looks like some type of IT stuff or,
Yeah, we figured those IT items we could take from the non-lapsing account.
did you hear that, everyone? Awesome, that's right there. And lab monitors, those same thing?
Yeah, we'll take them from, we'll supply them from our non-lapsing.
All right, so that's 106,000. So I'll thank you.
Great work, Christine. Thank you.
All right, so we know where the cuts came from. And I'm just gonna go over some things with you and then we can have discussions about how we feel about the cuts and where we, where we want to do from here. So plugging in our present net grand list, the mill rate of 28.6 mil. And the present circumstances with the additional revenue and the cuts that everyone made, we now have in the black number surplus of 109,742.
What does that work out to be a mill? For the mill rate, how much?
It's almost 2/10 of the.
Yeah, you could knock down close to 2.2 mils.
0.2.
So you could wipe that out and go down to 28.44 and change, and you're gonna have might have a little deficit.
If you went to 28.42, you would not have a deficit.
Correct. At 28.45, we'd still have 21,429 in there. If we went to 28.5, we'd have 50,867 in the surplus.
Okay. We all seem to agree to bring it flat or gain in our 212,000,
We did that.
right? We did. So are we going to try and keep it flat and use that money to fund some things that you guys are going to push off for next year? Or
That's the
do
discussion.
we drop the mill to give everybody a little sense of we dropped it?
You hit the nail on the head there, Carl.
So-
That's where we are. That's exactly where we
Instead
are.
of messing around, maybe we ought to just hit it.
So for new Board of Finance members, to move to the budget hearing, all you need to do is approve the expenditure side. You don't need to set a mill rate. You don't need to necessarily figure out what the mill rate would be. You're just moving the expenses forward for the annual budget hearing so the people can see the numbers and then give feedback. And then you would make any changes from that feedback at the next meeting you have after April 11th, and then it would move to town meeting.
So Christine or Mike, if I can hop in. So to set expenses, if our vision is then to give taxpayer relief, we'd have to approve something with our income based on 28.4. That's the number we have to agree upon tonight. Not necessarily that we're going to give taxpayer relief, but we can't not spend that 109 or
If
okay,
you-
well, maybe we could. We'd not spend it, but we don't have to commit it to taxpayer relief. We can just say we're going to not spend it all. Is that accurate?
Not entirely. So you're only looking at the expenditure side. When you start taking into consideration the mill rate, you're looking at the revenue. So if you wanted to cut it so that the mill rate would be 28.4, then you would need to cut $8,009 from the budget or use $8,009 from the undesignated fund to balance the budget. So it just depends. So if you're using $8,009 to balance the budget from the undesignated fund, then you would be moving forward the budgets as presented by the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education. And then at your meeting after the annual budget hearing, you would make those final determinations if there's no changes to use that money from the undesignated fund to balance.
I think the conversation that at least Carl brought up though, is we want to talk about whether we want to respectfully propose that some money go back into the budgets that was cut or we keep it as presented.
Yep, absolutely. I just, since you have new people, just wanted to remind everyone, it's just the expenses that you're voting to move.
Gotcha.
Right. No, I agree. It's a part of the discussion for sure. So I know, I would say that, they did what we requested. This money was part of their, but we were in the red last year because we overspent, right? We gave monies to budgets that we didn't have and had to take it out of the savings account. Now the departments have stepped up and closed that gap with monies they were awarded last year. That's amazing. Now Bob and his team have recognized additional revenues that are going to be coming to us later on this year. that's just a plus that we didn't have at the end of our last meeting. I, for one, think it's the boards did their job. We found some revenue. Now let's give this money back to the owners, the taxpayers. I don't necessarily want to go back in and spend it right away. Both Christine Wagner and Bob, the leads of their boards, have said that they've found ways to do this. And again, I would not call it reductions. It's just they're going to receive smaller increases. No one cut their budget. They're just not going to get the total increases that they'd requested. So I think that's a better way to frame it in my mind. But happy to have those conversations with the rest of the team at this point. Thank you, Mike.
Yes, sir.
So I have a comment. It's okay.
Please.
So we've heard twice at two different meetings from parents supportive of the Board of Ed budget. I think we don't have line by line oversight on the Board of Ed budget, obviously, but I would like to consider if we would be open to returning the 1,600 in school supplies back. I think that would go towards
The 16,000.
Yeah. 1,600.
Different.
I think that would go towards the sentiment that we've heard in the public comments in multiple meetings. And it's really ultimately their decision what they do with that, but
It's got to be a suggestion because we're not allowed to do line items. I would also like to see, there's a piece of equipment that is supposedly failing, just like your truck that you had to pull money out of, that we should probably reconsider putting that back in, so we're not $47,000 behind next year to start. But that's a suggestion from me.
Which one are you talking about?
The rolling deck trailer,
The walking floor?
the walking floor trailer, yeah. To me, it's a rolling deck, it's a walking, it doesn't walk on its own.
So can I ask a
Before,
question?
yeah.
That's a good one. I mean,
Yeah, give me 1 second. If do you have a comment on what Carl just said?
I did. So are we, I was gonna,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, who's speaking? Is that me? I apologize.
No, Paul, it's Mike. I'm saying, go ahead with your comment.
Great, thanks, Mike. So yeah, I think it was half the cost of that rolling truck. So maybe it's a question for Bob. Is that to mean that we're going to encumber those funds, try to save some money to buy that truck, that trailer outright next year? Is that kind of your logic there? We're putting half of it in?
So
We've got an ambulance and other items in the past?
So we took half that truck out, hoping that if there was any ARPA funds money that we could use to put in later to do that, or if the truck fails between now and the next year, we'd have to go through an appropriation with the Board of Finance, which as a board, we've already said that we really don't want to go for appropriations if it's not in the budget. We didn't want to go back and ask the town for money again. It should either be in the budget or should not be in the budget. So we're hoping by putting half in this year, put the other half in next year, and then buy the truck next year.
Yeah, so yeah, I think I'm not sure if that's really called encumbering funds, but I think we know that 50 grand is for a purpose. So, okay, just want to understand what your strategy was there. Thank you, Mike.
Yep. Before we go on with anything additional on what we have, I want to address Sean Murphy's comment on C3.04. Just so I'd like to hear Bob's take on that.
Well, right now, the amount of money left in that line item and that capital line item is 17,025.63. So 17,025.63 is there now. We know that we have to paint town hall because it's blistering and the paint's coming off it. So I don't know what that will cost. It's not going to be inexpensive. I couldn't even guess at what that's going to cost. It's not going to be, I don't think it's going to cost more than 17,000, but it's going to take a big chunk out of this, which would leave us down to very little left in this balance. And that's why there's $20,000 in the budget this year.
are you contemplating something in the next fiscal year that is going to cost 20,000?
So it's not it's not that we're thinking it's what could happen. I didn't expect to be painting town hall. We just have to walk out of there one day this early spring and we saw water bubbled up underneath the paint and we know it was painted a number of years back. So when you're dealing with old buildings, you never know what's going to happen. So it's always almost like an insurance policy to have that money in there. So yes, there's 17,000 there now. If we had nothing going on with that 17,000, I would say, maybe we could at least take half of that 20 out. But I think a lot of that 17,000 may get used up when we repaint the building.
Okay. Is anybody in favor of trying to lose that line item?
No, having painted my house recently, you're gonna use most of that $17,000.
So the balance that's in there now is 17 and you're requesting another 20 to put in on top. I wouldn't say take it all out, but if you want to take a portion of it. Would be me, but-
How many buildings do you have to take care of?
So that was what I was just going to add. So we have added buildings onto the roster of what we're responsible for taking care of. One of those is this building. I don't foresee large scale repairs coming out of the new line item that we created. That's supposed to be operating expenses. That's supposed to be for the utilities at the building, the maintenance contracts that we have on the HVAC system, those kind of things, not any larger repairs that might need to happen. So we have the Center for Emergency Services, we have the Senior Center, we have the Rec Center, we have 2 town halls, we have the highway garage, we have the transfer station, we have this building. We also have the 1750s house, but thankfully that has its own line item for capital repairs. So I think, previous administrations had laid out what projects they were going to do with the funds. We've taken the approach of when it breaks, we fix it. So I think we need that in there because we haven't had the planned projects for the last 4 or 5 years. So things are going to need to be repaired.
Oh, you think we can move on from that item, that discussion?
Nope, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I do have a question on the rec commission. Then if the town handles the maintenance for that building, what is maintenance expense for the rec commission B1602?
That's for outdoor. That's for the rec fields and the rec shack, not for
not for the
267 Norwich Wesley Road.
That's not for the actual building itself.
It's the resurfacing of the tennis courts and the.
Well, maintenance is in the eye of the beholder. We have to make sure that we know it's outside, not inside. the
Yeah,
building.
and the majority of it goes to field maintenance.
Okay.
All right, well. We have 109,742 to consider as to whether or not it goes to a rate reduction or adding things back. Gary, go ahead.
One question about the resurfacing. What exactly were we doing resurfacing? Was it seal coating or were you doing new macadam? What was the resurfacing?
Seal coating on all the school building parking lots. And then after you seal coat, you have to put the reline it.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm good, thanks.
I'll weigh in on what I would, personally, I would say we stay at the 28.6. And we strategically add back things that we think are important. The issue is that, in my mind, listening to Christine's presentation, we have a big what if on $70,000, whether or not they're going to be able to hire people at a lower step. Maybe one of them, that's that's a hole in a budget for next year if they can't. To Sarah's point, school-wide supplies, we all know that teachers are buying their own supplies and pencils and stuff and bringing them in because, and it's not just our district, it's everywhere, but if we can relieve that burden because, on the teachers. And I want to just kind of preface it this way. If Bob came in with this extra revenue 2 weeks ago, that would have plugged in that $213,000 gap, and we wouldn't be asking them for as much of a cut as they did. They came in with the cuts, and some of them are a little bit specious. He's hoping that, there'll be enough ARPA funds to pay for the rolling trailer before it fails. These guys are hoping that they're going to be able to hire somebody at a lower step. Personally, I knew it was going to happen probably that the Wheeler Library was going to get a reduction because of what our ask. And, I'd like to see that $10,000 stay in there personally. So it's just a question of what are the priorities. And, if this group is dead set on lowering the mill rate, we have the option of going down to 28.5 and having 50,867 to work with. 50,867. Yes.
I'm comfortable with the half a truck. I'd rather see you give it to school supplies. I'm pretty comfortable with our budget. So.
Okay. So
Reducing that, what does that per household work out to be? Do we have an idea on that, Christine? Will you pay attention?
She was caucusing.
If we do reduce it to the whatever rate you guys were talking about, what is that savings per family or per household? I don't, it's kind of.
Is it like $5?
probably.
That would be more of a thing to show people than, yeah, we reduced it, but I didn't see it at my house.
Yeah,
You
but
know what I'm saying? That's,
But it's not just residential homes, it's a blend.
it's a
all
blend
the
of
way-
everything.
it's a blend all the way
Taxes
around.
on the building, taxes on my
Taxes on the
business.
buildings, taxes on your cars, taxes on your
Right.
campers, trailers, everybody's fixated on your home and the taxes on your home.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. How much does that save me? Let me reword that as, how much does it save me?
It could be,
Yeah.
it could be $20, it could be $1,000.
Yeah.
It's a
Okay.
huge range and
It's hard to.
it's a huge demographic in town.
Yeah, you have more, you get more. I don't
That's
get
right.
it.
Mike, can I add one more thing?
Yep.
We have not finalized the steelworkers budget yet. Steelworkers contract yet. Those negotiations will be starting soon. If it holds true that comes out the same way that the other one did, we're probably looking at about another $4,000 of expense on the Board of Selectmen side. It shouldn't be any more than that, but right around 4,000, I'm guessing.
Okay.
That's a one-time expense, right, Bob?
It's
So you're talking
expense.
about, or is that
One time.
salaries?
It's a contract, so it'll be the next 3 years.
Oh, the salaries, okay, thank you. Yeah, so if I could, Mike, I think we've heard from both boards that, they're gonna get the needs, perhaps not the wants, but I do think that this is a great year to have that balance, right? So we got the needs from the two boards, and we're gonna give some of the money back to the people, who fund everybody, and that's the taxpayers. So I thought everybody did a good job with it. To me, this is the way to go. We've closed last year's overspend. Now we've given back a little bit of money to those who deserve it. So in these times, I would be comfortable for that. I would not be in favor of a budget that didn't recognize the taxpayers here and still close the budget gap set from last year. So I think in my opinion, I'm one vote, but I think I'm comfortable where this thing sits now. I heard Christine saying that, wasn't wildly confident, but it wasn't that there wasn't going to be ways to fund some of these when she lessened the increases that she was requesting.
we,
Thank you, Paul.
if we do though, I think Mike, your proposal or concept you threw out there, sorry, a concept you threw out there was we can,
Thank you, sir.
can reduce it to 28.5. And that still leaves a surplus of 50,000, right?
Correct.
So it would be a reduction in mill rate.
Yes. The only thing, Paul, I hear you. And my concern is, there's always an increase down the road from where we are presently with the Board of Ed. And, last year we wanted to, there was a lot of discussion about taking more from the board, from the undesignated fund, which would have left us in, a $400,000 hole versus a $200,000 hole. And the concern I had, and I think we all agreed at the end, was like, we know there's going to be increases next year. And so how are we going to allow increases and still fill this hole, if it's so deep? We don't have a hole. I mean, luckily we just filled the hole by what the boards did, but what do we lose in the meantime? And we know that there may be things coming down the pike that they're going to have increases on next year. I mean, I don't know, Christine, is there anything else that you're concerned about next year that you want to fill us, like, that could be budget busters for you? Or that's my only concern. We're asking them to reduce things. We have one little unknown already. Is there anything else unknown about next year that's contractual arrangements that are going to be scary?
Do you want me to?
Yeah.
You want me to respond, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really concerned about next year, and I'm really concerned about the year after. We've got quite a few things that are coming out of grant right now. Mostly it's staffing for support, for learning support, for language support, for math support. If you had the opportunity to hear the presentation from our administrators, what those supports have done for our students, especially through COVID, has been amazing. We are not falling behind like many districts are at the same level. We are still behind, but we won't be able to keep those people because they're grant funded, and those grant funds will be going away. We're coming up on a teacher's contract, and teachers are experiencing inflation like everybody else. They're experiencing gas at the pump. They're experiencing high inflation rates. They're experiencing all of that. So that's going to come up when we're looking at contracts. And what's going on with contracts across the state is what we're always held up against. And we have some amazing teachers. So we need to keep them. So yeah, I think if you look at our budget progression over the last 20 years, it's concerning. We've been kicking it down the road a long time, and I'm not sure how much longer. I think we're in a really good spot this year, and I feel like we need to take advantage of that versus, I know you can't say what the mill rate reduction would do, but I'm wondering if you could look at a $700,000 asset, cars, house, whatever, what does that do in a decrease like that? I think that would be really helpful for people to understand. But yeah, to answer your question, Mike, we are concerned. We're always concerned about the next year.
Christine, may I ask you a question?
Yes.
So when the ESSER fund run out, is there what concerns me with the school system in general is if they keep taking federal funds, because I think it changes the landscape of a community school. So I would much rather have a local community be providing the funds for the school so that we're not forced to take federal funds, which are attached to other things that come into the school. I don't know, I just want to throw that out there because a lot comes into play when we force the schools to take funds that aren't from our local community.
I think that one of the biggest pieces of that is the ECS sharing the money, which you guys have on our revenue page. That is direct money into the town. So if we started doing things without that funding, the Board of Finance would need to figure something different out. It's a large share of money. And it's the same with the lunch program and with IDA grants and so much of that I hear what you're saying. We are definitely tied to those grants, but I don't know, as me being chair of the Board of Ed, that I would have the strength to walk away from that
No,
money
I'm
to.
not saying that money, but more funds coming down the line. Like if there are additional ESSER type funds.
I don't see that that's going to be happening at this point. These monies were all pretty much tied to COVID relief,
Right.
and that's drying up now. So, and we only have a certain period of time to spend it, and there's only certain things you can spend it on. And we've chose to spend it on support for our students.
For 2024.
On the most recent one, it's 2024. So we have those on 2-year contract for support.
And what kind of money, what kind of dollars are we talking about with the strictly grant people?
Those positions, Deb, if you can help me with that. I would be guessing right now because I don't have it in front of me.
Well, I'm going to introduce you, Deb. Deb Martin is the business manager for the Board of Education. And she joins us during this process, thankfully, every Wednesday.
I try anyway. All right, so the original budget would have had the page outlined just after your expenditures, and it's with the staffing. So it has the number of the dollars associated with the staffing levels and the amount of staff that's allocated in those positions. So our general fund is for staff is 131.1, whereas our grant funded staff is 3.7. But with the stipends and those are not considered full-time staff. So there are 4 additional positions that are currently being staffed out of grants that are stipend positions. Those are support positions that are for the language arts, like she said, math, student services in each building. And then we have a paraprofessional that is also a grant that you can see that increase this year. That was one additional. I'm not sure if you found the page. The dollar amounts I don't have here at this point, but I can certainly get that for you and put it over to you.
Is it the 196, 382 or? No? Extra duty stipend? Or no?
No, that extra duty would be like all our coaches and, maybe like the advisory group or NHS.
You're talking about are you talking about like 216, the para and assistant salaries?
The assistant salaries on the paraprofessionals?
Is that what you're talking about, Deb? Is that?
Well, there is one, and that's about $19,200
Okay.
currently. But it looks like our staff that's covered by grants. We're at $126,754 that are accounted for those three full-time
Okay.
0.7.
So that's, if we do not have grants in 2025, if we want to keep those paraprofessionals, then we have to come up with the money.
That's just their salary. If we go to the paraprofessionals and the teachers that are in those positions, there'd be the benefits in that are also associated, the taxes that we have to match. So there'd be a little higher cost, but yeah, it's relatively about 140.
Okay.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Going back to Christine's comment, $700,000 assessment, the difference between 28.6 and 28.5 is $70.
A year?
savings. Yes. So. And Winona has a hand.
Winona, please.
Hi, if I'm thinking about this incorrectly, please forgive me, but whenever we heard from the assessor's office on the revenues for motor vehicle taxes, wasn't that based upon the current mill rate? And so my question is, if we are thinking about changing that, wouldn't that decrease the revenues from motor vehicles, or am I not thinking of this correctly?
Can you repeat the beginning of the question?
When we were given the initial revenue estimates from the assessor's office for motor vehicle taxes, was that based upon the current mill rate that we're now talking about reducing potentially? And if so, go ahead.
We're working off of a spreadsheet that takes into consideration the total grand list and the total revenues. So when Mike's saying that it would be a $50,867 surplus still, if it was 28.5, that's accurate. So everything takes into consideration the current numbers that we have from the assessor's office.
I think Winona's question is, so we have a grand list of 699,275,783. We have a net grand list of 597,721,283. Does that revenue generated on the grand list, does that change if you change the mill rate?
It does, but that's all in the spreadsheet. So
already accounted
the
for,
grand
right?
list number is not changing. So that's one of our constants. So then we use that to calculate how much we would be getting for, based on whatever the mill rate is we put in, based on a 98.5% collection rate. And that's separate from whatever additional revenue we already know that we budgeted we're getting.
So the mill rate is calculated in the spreadsheet, so it's calculating the revenue at the new mill rates. It's
Right.
included as part of the formula.
I know, but when I'm on this spreadsheet, I just changed the mill rate.
Me too.
And this number, tax collections in the 98% changes,
Yes.
right? It doesn't change the net.
We
Mill
don't
rate.
touch the net grand list because that's the number the assessor tells us that all the property in town is worth.
Okay, it's worth, not what the revenue is, Winona.
Yeah, we calculate the revenue off of what the assessed value of the property is.
Okay,
So
so
you
the
have-
spreadsheet is changing the revenue based on the static grand list number and the variable mill rate number.
Correct.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that-
And
Net
that
grand
109
list. Go ahead.
That 109,000 would essentially be zeroed out if it were 28.42, whatever the number we said, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's how that arithmetic works and within that tool.
It was a good question, Winona. I saw where you're going with that. It's just, the grand list is based upon what the assessor values the property at. It has nothing to do with what revenues those properties generate.
Right, right. Yeah, so I think, sorry, Mike, I'm butting in again here, but I know there were concerns in future years, and I think we all have them, but hopefully there's some bright news on the grand list horizon from the first selectman's office and the assessor's office for that same time frame. So while there might be concern on one end, there are some brighter skies on the other, neither of which we know factually what's what, right?
Have we figured out enough for the school and for the town as far as our, I can't think of the word, gas, oil, electricity, all of that increases on that? Have we added enough in for that we're not going to be short at the end of the year? Being that everything's coming up, because the school's using quite a bit. We're using quite a bit. I mean, if it goes up $1 a gallon, if you just figure in gallons, that's quite a bit of money by the time you're done.
I agree, I'm leaving it to the Board of Selectmen to determine what they think they need and the town crew.
So those discussions were had by the Board of Selectmen as we we're going through our budget. If you notice that a lot of those have increases over last year, and we took into consideration the change in utility costs. So
And you feel you got enough in there, you think?
I hope.
Okay.
I personally, I think if we're going to have I guess, I don't know if I want to do a straw poll here to see who is on board with Paul about wiping out the whole 109,000.
And give it back to the taxpayers.
Give it back. Yeah, we
Yeah.
got that.
Yeah, okay, just wiping it out or cutting budgets, I think.
We're going, so here's the straw poll. Who wants to take that 109,742 and put it back to a mill rate reduction to 28.42?
What's the purpose of this straw man poll?
We're trying to see how far apart we are, because we
To
have.
see if, who wants to use,
Why don't we just vote?
Just vote it. Put it up for a vote.
Okay. I'll
I
make a
don't like to
motion.
do, I mean, I'd rather have more discussions about, if you weren't going to do that.
I would rather see, take some of the money, give it back to the school if we need to, and some back to the selectmen, and keep a little reserve of it for inflation. Other than that, I don't,
Inflation's gonna go crazy.
right, saving $70 for a $700,000 building.
Go ahead, Dan.
is not
So,
good.
so how do we make a determination of who gets what? We've had that,
That's-
we've had that argument before in the last couple of meetings of who
Yep.
gets what. You know, what.
We
right-
can, we can talk about what our what things we,
We can't
that
set
we
the
know
priority
that
for them, and we can't set the priority for them.
we're not
and
gonna,
we can't
we're
give
not,
them
we're not
the-
gonna set the priority. We're gonna say, it's basically like, we know what they cut, we know what the value is. You don't say, you have to put this back, or you have to put this back. You say, I'm giving you back $40,000. And you gotta, you prioritize it.
So we're gonna give them 20, and we're gonna give them 20, or we're gonna give them 15? How are we gonna make that split?
I think we can, I think, what?
Just give it to the board. You know, and this is what I talked about, a meeting or two ago, and like, all right, well, let them go, and then
They didn't want to do
they
it.
didn't want to do that.
I'm just, all I'm gonna say, Dan, is, are there things on here that you said, that now that we have this additional revenue that could have been there, that 213 hole could have been a lot smaller, and they wouldn't have had to make certain cuts? Is there certain things that you're like, I really don't like to see? I think I'm more worried about next year and what they're gonna need, or what they're gonna need, that we say, you know what, we're not gonna make you reduce your budget by 105 this year. It's now down to 60. Or whatever. And this is why we have discussion, where we can discuss this. Like, it's not we're telling them which line items to put back. Just saying, I think that, I'm worried about them not being able to staff those positions at a lower step. I'm worried about school supplies. So I think some money, I don't care how much it is, because maybe they get one person at a lower step, and maybe they get one person at, the same step. We don't know, but we have this money, and it's either going back, or it's gonna be a reduction, as Paul's suggesting. Go ahead, Bob.
So if you give the Board of Selectmen enough money for me to cover the other negotiation, so if I got $7,500 to be on the safe side to cover me on the second negotiation, you can, if any other givebacks you want to give back, you can give to the Board of Ed.
7,500?
Yeah.
That covers both your shortfalls?
B31.00.
We're hopeful that that would be to cover both the increases, the increase to FICA and the increase to the pension for what we would foresee as possible what we might have for the next contract.
Does that include the 4610 that you already had ratified? Or should we
That's
add-
already in the numbers we gave to you. So this is just for the other contract.
Okay.
What about getting that trailer?
I'm willing to hold off on that for now. We took half out, we could live with half for now. And I feel more confident that we'll be able to work that out. I was less confident in some of the things that Christine has to do with hiring new personnel.
Well, hold on a second.
split it even the first time. Split it even again.
7,500?
So 7,500 would be good.
All right. If we set the mill rate at a 28.5, we have 50,867 in remaining surplus minus 7,500 leaves us 43,367, which we return to the Board of Ed to be used to safeguard against them not having additional, not getting the people that they could last year. And also knowing that in future budgets, there's going to be a hole of $140,000 because the grant's going to be gone. I'll take comments on that. Go ahead, Gary.
I'm more worried about, Bob, you got 85,000 to run this school. That's 6 months, right? This building.
Yes.
I'm more concerned about the town keeping this building functional without it falling in on itself than gaps elsewhere. I mean, this is an albatross that collectively the town's got to deal with.
It is. In response to that, Gary, I'm hoping if things go the way we hope they will, then this entire building won't be here. As soon as I get the RFP going and we get get some bids going and get to go to the town meeting and tell them we have $1 million that you nicely gave us to put towards it. Maybe the expenses won't be 140,000 anymore. They will be 85,000. Plus we have a good chance to have some revenue coming into this building too. So I'm here 3 times a week on possible revenue.
I'm more concerned about the cost of construction trades and what's been going on in the construction and demolition industry. That I don't think the ARPA funds are going to be enough, Bob.
I don't think the $1 million will be enough now.
Do you have an alternate suggestion then?
No, I just want to, you made a suggestion that if there was extra that we hand it back to the school board, the Board of Education. I'm not certain we should make the decision where it should go. They have competing needs. How are we going to bridge that?
By compromise. I mean, that's our job, is to figure out, do we want to present a budget to the town that has what the Board of Selectmen need according to their, the meetings that they've had over and over and over again with their certain departments and what they presented to us and what Bob says he thinks after going through that whole process. And the Board of Education, who have been able to give us a reduction, but is there some pain there? That there is pain there that is likely to be realized, if not next year, at least the year after. So do we decide that we put more money back in that does both the relief to the taxpayer and put some money back in where we think it's appropriate?
I don't think we're aligned on where we think it's appropriate is where I'm going. I mean, the first part I got, but where we think it's appropriate, how are we going to get to that point?
We only have 50,867 to give.
Right.
So he says he needs 75. If we want to give the rest and they put it where they need it, hopefully in structural supplies, and then hold on to some for, that's a little wiggle room for those 2 positions. I think that's a pretty smart way to do it.
I'm not aligned, but that's okay.
Nor am I. So I think, I'm sorry, I have my
Hold
hand
on.
up. I'm trying to wave my hand here.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
You
so.
done?
Sorry?
Do you want to speak?
Yeah, I would love to speak, Mike. So the 50,000, I'm not sure where that number came from, but I'm still very happy with $109,000. The boards have done their work. Now we're just kind of getting a little wishy-washy on them. I'm comfortable as the 2 boards came to us with numbers, $109,000 in the black for first time in several years. I'm comfortable with this budget the way it is. Now, how we decide to use 109,000, I hope this board gives it back to the people who entrusted us with it. I don't think we have to spend everything that comes in. The boards have what they need, maybe not what they want, but I'm of the position that we have a budget and we should vote on that.
Christine, do you have a comment? Can you come up?
Sorry, I'll lower my hand here.
I just, I'm cautious on saying this because I may be going crazy, but I think we can cover the instructional supply this year. I don't feel that we're cutting that out and not giving it. I think we're going to cover it. The salary piece is a concern for us. I guess my thought would be if you guys held it and if we needed to go back for appropriation, then it's there. If we found that we hired and we were over what we thought we would be. You guys do appropriations. I think I watched it, I don't know how many handfuls of times this year. So my thought would just be maybe a placeholder in your non-designated fund versus maybe giving it back to Bob's budget or my budget, and not mine, but the education budget, instead of the maybe $70 relief to a taxpayer. Just a thought. I certainly would not take the money back into our budget. Please don't. That's not where I'm going with it. But as a taxpayer, I'd rather see the money I've already paid in taxes stay at the town ready to fund the needs, because everything in our budget is a need. There are no wants, just to clarify.
I think so a couple things. I definitely appreciate the gesture, Christine. If we held it, we still wouldn't be reducing the mill rate because we'd have to hold it in the undesignated fund. And we have heard very clearly and painfully from the public that when they approve a budget, they want to see the budget approved with everything. And if we do appropriations later, that it just confuses people and it frustrates people. And so I think we've also heard from the public on multiple meetings from multiple different people that the school budget is a priority. I think the reduction of the mill rate to 28.5, and it is a reasonable compromise. It is a reduction and it does allow us to have some money to do something with. And Gary, I also am concerned about the 298 building, having sat through all of those discussions for a year. So, I think it would be a fiduciary obligation to the town to make sure that the town has the maintenance it needs. And I think it's also a obligation to everyone who benefited from every school they went to make sure the Board of Ed has what they need. Because that's a give forward kind of thing, right? Somebody paid for us to go to school. It's our job to make sure the current group gets educated properly.
Dan?
What is the total amount that is coming out of the ERISA account now with the reductions that you guys made? Yeah, Deb. Reduction total, for this budget, what are you guys taking on the ERISA account for this budget? Understand it's going to be across the year.
And also, I don't know if you guys had the opportunity to attend our meeting last week, but we spent the entire meeting talking about that account and prioritizing our needs in that account, because there's so much that's not allowed that we aren't able to put into the budget. So that is something we're working on pretty actively right now. But what we have removed and reallocated this year is I'm just doing raw math, so bear with me. As I said, about 25,000.
About 25,000. What's the current balance that you guys are going to have at the beginning of the year for that account?
You can't use it for salaries though, correct?
Was there a microphone comment there? What was that balance, Dan? Are they still calculating?
Do you have it, Deb? Okay. And I don't know if you can subtract out the net that we just approved out of that too.
So based on our meeting the other night, Christine, we were at 228, 154 as a balance.
Okay.
So with regard to the additional items that were coming from the budget, that should all be in there.
Okay, so you're gonna end up with once that's spent, it's gonna be around 200,000 at the end.
Right, and it may actually be lower. There are some items that we haven't discussed yet still that with the move for our server room and bringing everything out of the old part of this high school, we have additional expenses that are going to hit the books as well. And those are items that we have previously talked about coming from the non-lapsing account. So it could likely be under 200.
Would you like a little bit of a list of the things that we're talking about for that? Okay, hold on 1 second and I'll grab it, okay?
Sure.
Right, with the other pending items, there's some items that they are talking about funding that have been spoken of for years and removed, as Bob had mentioned on the town side, that continually goes on. So more recently, they did approve and the town's working with us to put the safety net up around our baseball field, because that is a safety issue with the children and any spectators. And in part of that, the town will also help us put up our backstop that they've had purchased for years that just couldn't put up because of the projects that were pending. And that's saving us the 11,000 that otherwise we would have had to take out of that account. So we're working diligently with the town to be sure that we are being as responsible as we can with the funds.
And I have a brief list here, and we haven't prioritized it yet. This is just the things that we threw on the list the other night that we know we need moving forward. We need to repave the area underneath the basketball court where the kids play. It's all broken up and chopped up, so we need to have that repaved. It's pretty dangerous. We need to add an entrance gate behind the elementary school. I think that's the location, Deb, so that the machine can get in and out, right, for the septic. We need to fix the grass, and the entire back area is really muddy and chopped up and messy after the building project was completed. There was not enough money to do anything with that, so our kids aren't able to play back there. We need to be adding in. Right now, we budgeted to do mulching every single year. We have to add 3 to 6 inches of mulch on the playground every year. We are looking at doing rubber, would save us a lot of money over the period of time. We also have a lot of playground equipment we haven't purchased. We're like halfway there on playground. We need hardware to hang the curtain back up at the elementary school for $7,500 because when the building was done, the hardware no longer works. And it wasn't in the budget to put the curtain back up for our stage. We need $10,000 for the curtains at the middle school, high school. It's been taken out of the budget for the last 10 years. The fireproof backing's been removed and they're in really bad shape. We need to do something about our fields. Our soccer field and our baseball fields are a mess. And as we grow and draw people here, and especially as other schools want to come and play athletics, we've got kids twisting ankles and it's just not a good situation. We actually we've had a study done and we are able to tie into the existing well over there, the old one, to irrigate, which will help us with the grubs and everything else. So we're looking into that as an option. The soccer field is about 50,000 and the baseball field's about 90. Do you want me to keep going? Do you want more? Okay. We are looking at, let's see where the rest of my list is. The gate, Oh, the net, we just took care of the net behind the baseball field. We just finally were able to order that. We just approved the final expense on that tonight to catch the fly balls and to keep it safe for people when a baseball game is going on. Again, with the new construction where the placement is of the baseball field, it's not very safe over there. We're actually having to send our kids out and we can't do in-home games because of that safety issue. So when we have games, we're always transporting out right now. We're able to practice because we have the hitting net, but we don't have the outfield net, but we will shortly. Let's see, that goes also with the backstop, the gate, I think I already touched on. I think right now on my list here, there's other items, but that's all I have on this list here. Oh, we talked about the elementary field as well. We need additional printers at the elementary school. We also need cameras installed at the middle school, high school, that we're short in some of the hallways, and the administrators really would like to be able to have access to those hallways to see what's going on with our students. We need to get those cameras up and installed.
So
And
the
I
point
think
is-
that's it right now.
Point is, these are all non-budgeted items at this point that could be used for the RISA fund. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And just for all of our purposes, the RISA fund can be used for non-budget items. It can't be used as like a savings account next year when they have got a shortfall and they got to dip into it because they didn't have enough money in one line item.
It's not made for salaries.
No.
It can be used for any educational need, right, Mike?
Yeah, but it's non-budgeted items.
Yeah, other than salaries, anything educational in nature, I think was the definition of the document that we'd signed.
Well, I'm going to entertain a motion to on our formula, set the mill rate at 28.5 and put back $7,500 to the Board of Selectmen's budget and $43,367 to the Board of Education to be used for what purposes they deem fit. $43,367. That's based upon the undesignated surplus of $50,867 at that 28.5 mill rate with the present budget. So 50,867 minus 7,500, that's how I got to this 43,367. I'm going to make the motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
Take discussion on that.
I have a couple things, Mike.
Sure.
So 28.5. So we'll vote on this now. So should it fail, then we're going to, I'll probably go with another motion after that for the much lower mill rate. But just wanted to say again that I thought the boards did a great job coming to us with their budgets. They were satisfied where they were. It wasn't ideal for anyone, but I think they did a great job. And I think does them a disservice to say that after their work, that we're going to do something different, that they have to go back and then reapprove their budget. So for that reason, I know I'm going to vote against this proposal.
Are we in discussion?
We're in discussion,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, so we've been looking at the number of how much is going to be left to go back into the undesignated fund, 28, if we're at 28.5, and that would be the 58.67.
Correct.
The actual amount that would go back into the budgets is 58,800 875, because we have to take the difference between the 109,742 and the 50,867. Because when I did the backwards math, it didn't add up.
So it's 58, what?
So it's, I'll double check as you guys are discussing, but it should be 58,875. And then, right, because we're talking about lowering the mill rate.
The mill rate, the way I just plugged it into your
Yep.
formula.
Yep.
If you plug in 28.5.
Yep.
You have a variance of 50,867.
Yes, okay, and then we're respending that.
We're
I went-
respending that.
I went the other way. We're good. I went both ways and it didn't add up both ways. So thank you. Sorry. Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay. I'm inclined to suggest a modification to include a little bit more money to the Board of Selectmen to consider putting into the 298 building.
Would that be in addition to, would that be an addition to coming off the 109, like that, like not reducing the mill rate as much?
Yeah, it's reallocating the funds you, the 50,000. And I have Christina's right in my line of sight, so it's really hard. My heart.
And
is-
I
my
don't,
heart
I,
is at the
listen, I
school,
don't, you know, I'm
but-
happy to hear, you know, it seems like it's a concern. Gary brought it up,
Yeah.
you brought it up. And
I-
we can do it, we can do a different allocation. I'm entertaining, this is this
Yeah.
motion.
Yeah.
You know, please.
Yeah, I just, I mean, if you're, I know when you brought up 85,000, I was concerned then that it wasn't enough. I really hope we get the rental. That would be amazing. I'm not gonna force the Board of Selectmen to take more money, but I would be curious about your perspective.
So I feel pretty confident about one of the rentals and the amount of money we'll be getting. We've had to change some things around. The person I wanted to put on the second floor, I can't put on the second floor because she's early learning, and we found out I knew this, I don't know why it didn't come to me, but we can't put first graders and younger kids on the second floor of the building. I use that same argument why we had to remodel the elementary school when I was a Board of Ed chair. Somehow that information skipped my mind. We got to the 11th hour and the George Brennan said, don't forget, you can't put little kids on the second floor. So now we're looking at the first floor for that person. So far, it's working out pretty well. There's a theater group in town that pay a lot differently. They pay a portion of what they get through their ticket sales. They're looking at some space on the second floor. It's not a big win, but the amount of money we would get from the early learning center would pretty much cover the 2-story wing. The town would have to cover the middle section, and hopefully the other section's gone. What?
A couple what ifs in there.
It's true.
I don't care, Carrie. I love your facilities expertise to weigh in here.
The school did start at $100,000 number, and we dropped it to 85,000 in one of our Board of Selectmen meetings. So it
Yeah.
did start higher before we cut it back.
Christine, what was it last year? Without any utility volatility? Just what was the flat spend to keep the heat and lights on?
Somewhere around 140,000. It was a lot of painful conversations, and we had to go to the downtown for appropriation, and I would prefer not to do that again. If we can buffer that a little bit, than if you have to take buffer from somewhere else.
So we are talking next year's budget. This year, whatever the utilities are and the expenses for this year, we're saving money in the ARPA funding. We're saving about 140,000 for that benefit for this year, so it doesn't cost the taxpayers any money for what it costs us for this fiscal year. But going in next fiscal year is the 85,000.
I mean, my gut would say add another 10,000 in, so say 17,500 back to Board of Selectmen with a suggestion that they put 10,000 back into the 1098 building fund. And then the rest. I know it's not your motion, but it's in
I could rescind my motion.
Or we could we could edit it.
I'm just saying that, let's hear more discussion on the matter.
So did I hear you, Bob, say that you plan on, you have monies available for that building from ARPA funds?
So don't confuse the budget we're in now, the fiscal year we're in now and next year's budget, Paul. So we're not talking about this fiscal year. We're talking about next
right.
fiscal year.
When hopefully that building is dust, right?
A portion of it, but yes.
Yeah. So right now, we have $85,000 in there. Are you saying that there's no ARPA funds that we could use if you had another $140,000 bill? Just so I'm crystal clear.
Will be no ARPA funds left next year to use anywhere. It's 140,000 would pretty much zero it out. And we hope to use that money for this year's expenses for the 298 building, so the taxpayer doesn't have to put that bill again.
Okay, so the 85 grand that's in there now is coming out of tax revenue
For next year, yes.
for next year. Okay. All right.
And it will continue to come out at some expense because as long as the town keeps this room as a meeting room and a voting area, and we keep the Board of Ed over here and we have space over here.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I got you.
This is now becoming a municipal building.
Yeah, I'm still trying to separate the two.
Still a lot less. It's still a lot less money per year than if we were building a building and having a municipal building. This space has turned out to be a pretty nice space for meetings of even town meetings can fit in here pretty easily. And if we can keep it set up on a regular basis, voting works well in this building. We can make it a little bit better with changing some parking around, but I think it's becoming a town asset as a municipal building.
And if the town retains it and has tenants, we will still be paying all of the utility bills and then being paid back by the tenant for whatever their rent or utility charges are. We aren't signing over the utilities to their names, so the town will always have to pay that and budget for it. The money that was spent last year on 298 North Wesley Road was $122,716. That includes the per square foot charge that we gave to the Board of Education. So that was $17,475. So you have to look at multiple spots. So 122.
So total cost would like 140 then minus the 17 that. Okay, 105 plus the 17. Okay, that's a better number.
So we're closer with you.
I don't have I'm just looking at the numbers, Sarah. So if we, you have 50,867 to play with, give the Board of Selectmen 17,500 back to their budget. That leaves 33,367 to the Board of Ed. And should they have a problem with, getting somebody at the lower step, at least that's almost half of what they're lost right now. That's a 70,182 reduction that they took off the budget. We give them back 33,000, and that gives them a little breathing room for those positions.
That still leaves a reduction.
And it still leaves a 0.1 mil reduction. Gary, how do you feel about that additional 10 grand?
I still don't think that we should be holding the taxpayers' monies for what if. We should set the budget for what the groups say they need to operate and be done with it. I do feel a little funny asking for the reduction and then saying, we're going to give you some more back. It's just, it's indecisive on our part.
Can you explain that a little further?
So we asked for a 200, what was it, 206,000? Oh, no, 13. And we asked, it was a long, painful meeting. I remember it very well. I'd rather not live it again. But they came back and they met the request. And now we're going to decide, okay, thank you for doing that. We're going to give you some money back. It's kind of back and forth. And especially when they said they were able to do it, it was painful, but they have a reasonable level of competence that they can bring it in for the budgets they proposed. That's the way I read it.
I see what you're saying, but you're seem to be talking out of both sides of your mouth, because then you're telling him he needs more money in his budget for this building.
That was what I was putting in context was the decision was to give the bulk of it back to the school
Mhm.
and 7,500 for the town. And I felt the town had a bigger exposure.
I don't, and
operating a
maybe
school
I don't
versus-
disagree with you, but
It wasn't anything against what Bob said. Bob says he could bring it in. I'm right behind him. But it was my personal perspective.
Yeah.
Countering your personal perspective where you said you think it should go to the school. So it's not both sides.
I
of
was
my
just
fence.
going, I was going, and I'm just,
Yeah.
that's tongue in cheek. I was just going on his suggestion, all you needed was 7,500. Then you guys are making very good points about, should we put more money back in
Mhm.
to, do we put it back to the original 100? But he's saying 10. I just, and you seem to be saying now that you want to take the whole 106, 109 and put it back.
Yep.
Take the mill rate down.
Yep.
I think there's new information that we have tonight that we didn't have when we made those decisions last 2 weeks ago. So that's the difference, is we're contemplating new information around the increased revenue.
So I think that,
I made that point before. I said, if Bob had this information about, the additional revenue 2 weeks ago, we would not have asked for $106,000 reduction. We would ask, for, less than that. I mean, we'd be it'd be a $50,000 reduction.
I'm not sure we wouldn't have gone for more.
right. Yeah, I'm not sure what would happen, but I'm hearing you. I mean, I'm with you, Gary. I think good work by the boards. They have some degree of confidence this could happen. I think we're getting butterflies. But I think they did some good work, and we should accept their budgets now after the second iteration. The new information is great. I mean, the new information is also their new budgets, not just Bob's increase in revenue. So, yeah, I think they've done some good work, and we got to get there.
I think we have to take into account the public feedback that we get. That is part of our job as the Board of Finance. And we've had plenty of public feedback over the last couple meetings.
I think that would be at the hearing, though, right, Sarah?
But we get it here at the meetings too.
Right, you're right. Yeah, very small subset. You're absolutely right. I think Winona's hands up, Mike.
Go ahead, Winona.
Thank you. There was also some public feedback at the Board of Selectmen meeting last week, where it seems that I think some of the townspeople feel like the Board of Finance doesn't trust the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed to put budgets forward. And while the new revenue information is interesting to have and a good thing, I do agree that it does make us look more questionable if we were to in turn change what we were given again. If in fact, some of the common rhetoric is that as the Board of Finance, we should trust that what we're given is what these boards need. That's all.
Thank you. I mean, but we've asked these guys to make cuts. They have things that and what Christine said earlier is, they're all needs. This is not a lot, there's no wants here. And, all the things that Bob has cut out, they're still gonna happen. So I've been here, this is my third budget cycle. It's Dan's second, your third too? And maybe it's me and Paul's fourth, I don't know.
Fourth for you guys.
Fourth? Yeah.
Lucky you.
And this is how it works. I mean, it's a back and forth, and 2 years ago, during COVID, it was, you saw, you guys weren't, it was crazy.
It's always the last 50,000 we always fight over. I'm telling you, every single year.
And it's good debate, and it's not wishy-washy. It's saying, we have revenue and we have expenses. And we just had a change in revenue. And it's not a change in revenue from cars. This one's not cars going up. This is, from a project that the fact that we're growing and, and doing good work and trying to, attract businesses that are within our environmental policies and what have you. I mean, this is good revenue here that we have an opportunity to say, Bob, what could you need back? He's worried about contractual arrangements, needs a little bit more money back. Gary and Sarah bring up a good point. We might not have enough money in that, in this building. We have an opportunity to put that money back. These guys are, they have some confidence that they're going to be able to hire at lower step, but it's not necessarily guaranteed. I'm trying to come up with a compromise that says, let's put some of that money to work, that we're putting forth a budget that we don't have to come back for appropriations and what have you. And yet give some taxpayer relief, which was Paul's goal. And I think everyone here is, we all pay taxes. So we like taxpayer relief if it's smart. So I think a middle ground and with maybe more towards the Board of Selectmen, as suggested, was probably a good idea. And the remainder go to the Board of Education for a little bit of cushion. Go ahead, Dan.
I think especially for the new board members, we're just putting this budget out for a hearing. We are not setting the mill rate. We shouldn't be really even talking about how much the Board of Ed is going to be getting and how much the Board of Selectmen is going to getting everything. We should be they came back with their budgets. This is what it is. I understand they came back with additional revenues. Great. We should be saying, with the information being put forward, we take all that. This is what the mill rate's going to be. And if it's, 28.42, we send it out to a hearing, and you know what? Let's listen to the parents come back and say, hey, we want to have more spending towards the Board of Ed, or we're not funding, Norwich Wesley Road enough. Let them come back, and then we sit back here a couple of weeks from now and actually make the decision of how much the Board of Ed gets and how much the Board of Selectmen gets and everything. We're going like 3 or 4 weeks ahead of where we should be, which is great. We're all thinking ahead, but we're just taking all the information. This is what the mill rate's going to be, and send it out to a hearing. We're not setting the mill rate. We're not sending it out to referendum. This is a simple.
No, but we're trying to put forward the best budget to present to the town.
And then what was presented was, yes, information came back from, we had some more revenue. They made their cuts that were requested. They made the requests we requested. We had additional revenues. All right, this is what the mill rate's going to be. Send it out to a hearing and let's pack the place with 200 people and find out from everybody what they want to do, what they want to spend. That's how it used to be. And then the numbers kept on dwindling down. And usually was like 30, 40, 50 people maybe show up. And everybody keeps on talking about how 50 people make all the decisions in this town. Well, we'll put forth the budget, and that's what we should be doing. And then after the hearing, we make the determination of how much they get, and then we send out the referendum.
It'll sound like the steps.
That's the step, that's the budget. That's how we do it.
I don't disagree with anything you said, Dan or Gary, but I think it's one philosophy on how to get there. I also don't think that there's any, we're not dithering, we're not going back. Like, I don't think it's a problem to evaluate all the information in front of you as a Board of Finance and make new decisions based on new information. I don't think we can characterize that as, I don't think you were, but I think I heard it from a couple other folks.
We're just readjusted the budget, and what happens a lot of times is we ask for our cuts. New information came in. It should be, that is it. We put forth the budget to the town at the hearing as that is. As soon as we start saying, well, you're gonna get, 30 and you're gonna get 28, it gets complicated. keep the numbers the way that they are. We asked for this much cut, you met it, you found new revenue, this is what's gonna be. And then this is what the windfall is gonna be. You know, we're gonna have $109,000. Where do you want to spend it? Do you want to have a short, do you want to have tax relief? Or would you rather give it back to the boards? That should be in our presentation that we give to the town. And then let the town decide at the hearing. And then we come back and then we start having this discussion that we're having now, 3 or 4 weeks from now.
A lot of their cuts though are based on exposure. So it's like, if I'm making a household budget and I think, oh, well, maybe I won't spend that much on food next month, I'll just like, it's exposure, right? So, or maybe I'll get a raise, maybe I won't.
But
That's kind of what we're
let the
talking
town
about.
see that exposure. Why are we shouldn't be going and saying, hey, you know, we're having some exposure, but we're going to mitigate it by giving them this and this and this. And we're always going to hear the whole, well, you guys are showing it's too complicated. Just make it black and white. I yield my time for Christine Wagner.
Oh, sorry.
Christine's making a comment.
Is she? Okay.
Come on up to the mic.
Getting your exercise.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interject, but that's something, Dan, that I agree with you 100%. We've been asking from the start. We're bringing you forward our very best budget after we've already done all of our cuts and after we've done all the work. We brought it forward, and that was our ask initially. Can you look at it, see if there's questions on things that you don't think are right? And if it's our very best budget forward, take it to hearing. But unfortunately, the process is cuts go and cuts go and cuts go. And now what you're asking us to actually take to hearing isn't our budget anymore. So just to be clear, we're not taking forward our very best budget to hearing. And I'm fine taking forward whatever you guys ask us to take forward, but I agree with you 100%. We should be taking forward our very best budgets to hearing and then coming back and having these discussions.
Did the Board of Ed vote on this budget? What was the vote for that? After the cuts?
Right, well, they did with last time, yes, they put forward a budget that they. The motion.
Bring it to
Could
the
she
mic.
yell at the microphone, please?
Yeah,
Just yell.
I'm sorry. The actual motion that was put forward was to approve a budget that was cut by the Board of Finance, is the language of the budget. So that was what was approved.
So was it also that there was a $250,000 increase to your budget? That was the number, right? You approved the number. Is that correct?
That wasn't the motion of the budget moving forward. It was the number, right? It was the bottom line number.
Which is
It was
$250,000
requested to
more.
be cut by the Board of Finance is how it was put forward. I don't know the language exactly in front of me, but I'd have to check the minutes.
But it was a $250,000 increase over last year.
I know, but he was asking me what we voted on.
Okay.
And that was what our motion was.
Okay. And sorry, I don't know if Christine or Bob are still there within earshot. What's the increase that we're, as presented tonight, would the Board of Selectmen realize? Dollars wise?
So
Christine.
the increase for government operating is 140,954. The increase for capital is 165,902. The increase for education is 248,746. So between all four areas of the budget, it's 555,602,000 as an increase, 2.64%.
Okay, almost 1 mil of new spending that we're talking about.
If you look at it that way, yes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to frame it as many ways as we can. So we're all, it's one of these ways is going to resonate with some of us where others are not, right? So there's a lot of new spending in this bill, in this budget. So again, not what was requested up front, but some nice increases here, $500,000 of taxpayer money going to fund important initiatives in the Board of Education, Board of Selectmen, capital and operational. So to say things are getting cut, I still frown on that. Things are being increased. The people are getting more money to spend, just not necessarily what they want. Oh, I'm sorry, Nicole. Oh, sorry, Mike, this is your meeting. Nicole's got her hand up.
Where's she at?
Oh,
Virtual
go ahead,
meeting.
Nicole. I didn't see you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Just want to comment, Paul, for me, when everybody in their home is seeing the increases and the inflation, we all are spending more money. I just hate to have us think about the increase that you see in the budgets before you are not necessarily so we can have more money to spend frivolously. It's more money because everything has gone up, and we have to be able to respond to that. I just wanted to kind of make that comment. That's it.
No, and I think that's fair. And this is one area that everyone's spending more, all the taxpayers. They're also going to the fuel pump and to the heating the houses and everything else. And no, I understand that, but I think it's all piling on top of everything. So yeah, we got to spend more money to keep the town going, and the biggest asset, the school. And I think we are, because we give them, taxpayers give them almost 70% of all the funds that come to us. So I hear you. And I think that's a fair comment.
Just so for the audience, that was our Selectman Nicole Porter, right? Thanks. And to her point, it's a 2.64% increase overall in the budget, and that's, what's the inflationary rate right now? It's not. I don't think it's
3 times that probably.
Probably.
Yeah. So everybody's paying that on top of this, right?
No, my point is that it's pretty good. Pretty modest increase. Go ahead, Carl.
Being new to the board and listening to Dan, the thing we're going to send out tonight, we are allowed to readjust and do after the hearing?
Oh, yes.
Or set to the unit.
No.
So my vote would be more for send it out the way it is right now with the balance of 109, hear what the town said, and then come back and adjust it as long as we're allowed to. That's where I'm misconfusing.
We are allowed to.
We are allowed to.
You are spot on, Carl.
So I'm more in line with them guys then right now, just so you know. We're all kicking you down the barrel, aren't we?
Well, I'm just saying that we're here as a Board of Finance to look at, putting forward a proper budget that's going to cover our expenses. And we have an opportunity to put the best budget forward to the town in the first go around. It's not like, hey, let's give them, and to Christine's point, this isn't their best budget. All right, giving them a little bit more money puts them more towards their best budget. To Gary's point about, this building and the heating costs, having $10,000, I'd say maybe $15,000 more in there to get them back to the original 100 is a better budget that we're here to discuss. And just to say, we have good revenue that we've just found out about that could give them back money to make their budgets better. I don't think it's unreasonable to do that here tonight and put that budget forward. But it sounds like I'm going to rescind the motion that I made earlier, just because it didn't have enough for the Board of Selectmen. So I'm by rescinding that motion. I'll entertain.
Winona's hands up.
Winona, please go.
Hi, so would we ask the town what they want to do with the extra 100,000? Is that what I just heard Carl say, or someone explain that to me, please?
So we'll listen to.
Go ahead, Paul.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it'll be during the town hearing. There'll be an opportunity after presentations for the public to get up and speak, and there'll be a mix of all cohorts of the town, and they'll share their feelings. Somehow we have to kind of put all that together when we come back post hearing and try to understand the feeling of the town, and then we make any adjustments if we decided that that's what we heard.
So I'll restate my question maybe, which is, and I think this is what Carl was saying, is that we would take these two budgets to the town the way they are, with the 100,000 kind of sitting there on top. and get commentary on the two budgets plus the 100,000?
Yeah, if that's what we vote on here tonight. Yeah, that's not what's the motion is right now, but
No,
There is no motion on the floor.
well, I disagree with that assessment, though. We're not going to go to the board, to the town and say, here's two budgets, plus what do you want to do with $100,000? It's here's the two budgets. The mill rate assumes that the tax savings, the town payers get a tax savings and a reduced mill rate with the two budgets.
Well,
So I guess
the conversation is going to be that here's the Board of Selectmen budget. Here is the Board of Education budget. It leaves a surplus of $109,000.
that's right.
And
That's
that's basically it. And then people can ask, what are you going to do with 109,000? Well, we could reduce the mill rate. We could, we can, through the presentations of the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen, they can tell them what's been cut out of their budgets to get that surplus, to inform the town of what's been taken out and whether or not, and then we'd have to get feedback from the town as to whether or not they think that they want that to go back in but it's not we're not saying, hey, we're going to put that 109,000 back into the mill rate at that point. You just say we have a surplus.
Right,
It can go to undesignated or it can go
exactly right.
back to the town, or it could go back into the budget. There's three choices.
Yeah. No, that's right, Mike.
So Paul, you prepare as the chairman, the presentation. That's how you're gonna frame it.
Absolutely. I mean, there'll be there'll be what we plan on, what the Board of Ed asked for, what the Board of Selectmen's asked for, what the delta is. And then we'll see where it goes.
I still think the Board of Finance has a fiduciary obligation to come forward with a budget that doesn't have excessive exposures. I don't think we're here tonight on that. I think if we voted, I'd get outvoted at this point, but I mean,
My thought is that
budget, that's our job.
they gave us a budget based upon certain parameters. Those parameters are changed. So you could say, well, we have $109,000. What budget would you want to put forward? That's why we're here. We have the Board of Selectmen here to discuss this. We have the Board of Education chair to discuss, these are what they cut out. These are what these guys cut out. And there was a good discussion about more money for this building. And we have an opportunity to put back in, say you got $15,000 more. And we think it should go back into the energy costs for this building. Go ahead, Bob.
When the Board of Selectmen discussed the $106,000 cut that the Board of Finance asked for, we knew about the revenue because I talked about it at my Board of Selectmen meeting. So we knew we had the additional revenue when we still decided to cut the budget $106,000. So it wasn't like it was a surprise to us. We knew it was there. And we still decided to do it. I don't know if the Board of Education knew it was there, but I did.
Yeah, so I think there's where this is our job, right? It isn't necessarily the Board of Ed necessarily doesn't have to know how much money we have to spend. We tell them how much money they can spend, right? Now we have to decide what that is. But if they think that we have a windfall or a war chest somewhere that we can supply more money, that's not their concern necessarily, right? We have to decide how we're going to fund the departments. So I think they came to us with a budget. So did the Board of Selectmen. We have the numbers. It does going to equal out to $109,000 going to the general fund at this point. We can decide how we're going to reallocate if need be. But again, I'm comfortable, and it sounds like there's a couple others that are comfortable with that here tonight. And that is the new information, right?
Bob,
one thing we didn't know we knew we'd have to come back when we negotiated the contract for the steel workers. So we knew we had to come back with that eventually. We know you could change the budget after the budget hearing by the town on April 11th. So I do know we're gonna probably need to budget another $7,500 for that. So we probably should have considered that when we we're doing our cuts. We didn't, but we knew we could come back later because you're gonna work on your budget some more after the public hearing. So if you wanted to put that back in our budget, you wouldn't have to do it later, but it's eventually gonna have to get done. We have to budget for it.
I know
Brett?
there's somebody talking.
Brett Mastriani, Selectman.
Hi, guys. Thanks for going through this grueling meeting tonight. I just wanted to reiterate that we did know about the 100,000 when we did cut our budget or ask for a reduced increase. But I have to tell you, like, during the campaign season over the past, before November, a big concern that we kept hearing time and time again was taxes. The tax rate in the town, whether it was residents that lived here their whole lives or residents that just moved here a few years ago. And I keep saying this, the benefit for the people that just moved here, I had someone that reached out and said, if taxes keep going up, we're going to move somewhere else. That is great for that person that has that luxury to do it without any real ties to the community. But we have to look at the people that have ties to the community that don't have that luxury to just move on. And I think these budgets show that we're still moving the town forward and we're looking out for the taxpayers' interest. And a big part of this is with that mill rate in decrease, if you choose to go down that path, it might not be a decrease for people. It might just balance them out, because you have to remember those motor vehicles and the reassessments from last year have increased people's taxes more than that mill rate percent increase, especially with those motor vehicle tax increases. So if you can mitigate that at all, I ask that you really look hard into doing that. And whatever you want us to do, we'll do. But I think that should be a concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett.
Thanks, Brett.
Can I make a motion that we send the budgets as submitted to the town meeting?
You should, anybody can do a motion. Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion that we send the budgets as submitted to the town meeting. What? Town hearing, sorry.
Town hearing, yeah.
Do we have a second?
I would certainly second that.
Discussion for the discussion?
Yeah, I'm gonna kick myself in the butt, but I have one concern. Remember a few years ago when everybody stacked the room on 50 people to try and vote for something? And I'm gonna pick on Christine. If she brings everybody from the school and fills all the chairs, we're gonna have an overflux of, we need our budget back in again. How do we go back to that and tell them no, if we don't want to do that? That would be, I mean,
so I think
or the other way, everybody from the town garage could come up and say, we need our trailer, I want it back in. So, and that would be the voice of the people.
I think we want to hear the voice of the people.
I think we do too. I'm just afraid of the 25 people that come out every time.
So I think everyone identifies himself. We know who they are. We know what part of the town they're from. I mean, that's part of the calculus, right? But it's important that everyone's voice is heard. So no, it's always a good, robust conversation at the hearing, for sure.
Any other hands up online?
It's me again, sorry. So to be clear, Gary, your motion is that the budgets that were presented tonight, which are the revised budgets, are the ones that you want to send to the public hearing?
Yep, yes.
Thank you.
So we'll have it down right now. The motion on the floor is to present the budget of 21,637,432,000. Total budget.
Do you want to read that again? Do you want her to
Yeah.
capture that in the?
It's 21,637,432. 432.
I trust your math, Mike, but I'd ask Christine to confirm that. Is that number would leave the
That's the
$109,000?
budget. That's the budget that was emailed out to the Board of Finance. So yes,
That would leave the $109,000 in the black.
yes.
Yes, which would leave us with 109,742,000 going to undesignated surplus. Any further discussion? We're going to take a poll. No, we're going to take, everyone's, we're going to poll vote. Yes.
Oh, why do we have to jump?
That's right.
I'm going to start from the new members. Carl,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Sarah,
No.
Dan,
Yes.
I am a no. Paul,
Yes.
motion carries 4-2.
Good night, Christine. Thank you.
Okay. That was a good discussion, everyone. I think it is what it is, and, we will, hear from the town, and I just don't, this is a process that we go through every year, and we're here with, we have 6 plus 2 very bright alternates, and we have, the Board of Selectmen head and the Board of Education chair that are here to facilitate, but, they're good discussions, and I don't have a problem with where we're going here. I don't agree, but, I respect what you guys say, and we're here moving forward, and we're going to present it to the town. Moving on, public comments, agenda item 6.
Brian Rathbun, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to bring up a point that I'm kind of confused on. The COVID relief monies that were given, I think they were given by the state, I'm not sure. And if they're included in I'm not sure if they're included in the Board of Education budget. And the only reason I'm asking about the Board of Education budget is because next year, if the budget passes the way it is and that COVID relief money is in there, and they're not going to get it next year, I understand that's a temporary relief money, then they've increased their budget by that much. And I don't think that is the right thing to do, because it'll be a burden to the taxpayers.
We can't reduce it.
At least that's the way I see it. So I don't know if, I don't know if anybody can confirm it or deny it, or if that COVID relief money is in there.
Mike, I think Deb would be the right person. to
We
ask
have
that question.
Deb Martin here, the business manager, that can answer that question.
So the budget that is in front of you, the 14 million and change, that is just general fund. What I was quoting earlier were positions that were discussed that were currently being paid for by grants.
I think what his question is, the
revenue page?
On the revenue page.
Right.
Looks like there was CARES Act money that
just outlines where our revenues are, but those are not included in the 14 million.
Okay.
Okay. That just outlines, so these are monies that the town does have, that if they go away, those either the positions or the types of things that they fund, the programs or the equipment, those items would no longer be funded. So, and some of those are, like, we have a lot of mandated items in our budget that once were funded by grants that we've had to absorb. And that can happen as well, especially when it comes to a special ed.
Yeah. So Brian, to answer your question, there is, if you looked at the budget on page 3, you would see that there's CARES Act, COVID money that's listed there, but those go to funds certain programs or positions that through a grant program that are only funded there. So they're not included in the budget of 14,527,467 presented here today. Does that answer your question?
So the page, so what you're telling me is the page 3 that's showing that the Board of Education won't get that amount of money.
What
For
we're saying is that
the way I understand it, the law says that the Board of Education budget can't be lowered once they present it and the town accepts it. So next year, they automatically get what they get this year. And my question is definitely of the money given to them by the state. That money is, yes, it is disappearing, but it shouldn't be included in the total amount that they get next year.
the revenues that are in the budget, Brian, do not include those amounts.
Okay.
They're not, because these positions are funded by that money itself. If that money goes away, those positions have to be removed. And that's why we had the discussion earlier tonight about Christine's concerns for budgets in the next couple of years, because those positions have done a huge amount for the students, particularly after the COVID year and a half, of getting them back up to speed in their learning. And the town may feel that those positions aren't dispensable, which means that, yes, we're going to have to replace those monies with town money in future budgets. Deb, does that about sum it up?
That does, but I think what Brian might be referring to is the MBR. And every fall, after our budget is passed, the state requires that I complete what our budget was in fiscal 2021, what it is this year, 21-22, and did we meet the MBR, the mandatory budget requirement that the state puts forth.
Right.
So what he's saying is we can't come in next year with a $13 million, or you'll come back at us and say you can only put forward a $13 million budget. That's, I think, what he's referring to. But yes, if the position or the money that the state has right now allocated as federal funds get taken away, we then have to assess the program and decide what gets cut, whether it's that program. If we put forward the program, then we have to make modifications throughout the budget somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah, well, it'd be helpful if you state what positions are hired by the COVID relief, to me anyways. That way, at least I know what positions you're talking of, instead of next year coming in and say, oh, well, we have to continue it. At least if we look at it this year, we got a good heads up on, okay, these are the positions, and it gives, as me anyways, I think you all know me, it gives me a chance to at least say, okay, I can watch that position or talk to people about that position and this and that. It gives me a better feel when I vote, that's all.
Sure. Well, what we tried to do, Brian, was supplement the budget that was in place with where the needs were that were created by COVID, so that we didn't create a fiscal cliff in 2 years. So some of the stipend positions that I spoke of, those positions are ones that we feel that we can absorb somewhere in the general fund, because those are definitely things that will continue to have a need for. Some of what we're doing is trying to reduce the gap of the learning that had happened during COVID. So the position of a para for to add the support needed in the classroom, or a language arts or a math support, those were added to get us through the next 2 years to bring those students back up to where they need to be.
Okay, I got you on it. Thank you very much.
Sally Timmons, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to make a couple comments about the going back to the needs versus wants issue. I wish that more of you folks had been at the last couple Board of Ed meetings because there's so much discussion going on about all of these items that they're looking to utilize their non-lapsing account for. There's much less money in that account than the needs that are there. And a lot of those are safety needs. So things like the flame retardant, the curtain not being flame retardant at the high school, the broken up blacktop at the elementary. We have really, really little kids out there. If you have little kids, that like really more than half the school year, a lot of times they're confined to that blacktop because they're not able to be out on the field due to the snow or the ice or whatever. So that's, a safety concern to have these really little kids running out there. There's big potholes and cracks in there. The surfacing of the playground, the wood chips, we in the past have had kids falling off equipment and getting hurt because that mulch that they use for the playground is it's like an engineered, product in order to protect the kids when they fall. And if you don't keep the right depth of that, then that's a problem. And the safety nets for the baseball fields that they haven't had for years now. So when I hear things like that they're not even asking for in their budget, to say that they're getting all of their needs, but not their wants, I think is not necessarily an accurate portrayal. So I'm just wanting to kind of keep that on everyone's radar, that there's a lot of things that they've already decided not to ask for when they brought this budget forward. So to try to cut more, is a pretty big ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally.
Roseanne Salisbury, go ahead.
Thanks. I think this was a really interesting discussion tonight. Just a couple things. I think after hearing how this whole process works and the order in which things get reviewed and then presented to the town, I definitely am a little disappointed that the town doesn't get to see those original budgets that the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen put together. It sounds from an outside perspective that a lot of the cuts that they were asked to make to decrease this mill rate, by 0.5 is somewhat arbitrary, especially when you start to look at, I think the example was, property ownership of $700,000 would equate to a $70 tax savings over the course of the year, which is pretty negligible when you're talking about $700,000 worth of property. I would think the vast majority of taxpayers in town are going to see far less than a $70 savings. And is it really worth, cutting that amount out of our budgets and, having Christine cut school supplies so that everybody can save a few dollars at the end of the year? It's just kind of my take on it. So thought I'd share that. Thank you.
And thank you, Roseanne. And to your point, I would expect that the Board of Education, at least, and I imagine Bob will have a slide in their presentations as to, where they started, where, if they, in an absolute perfect world, they had X amount of dollars, this is what their budget would look like. And, they're on the backside of what we received, we have a list of their first revisions, whether it was added or removed. And I think they came up with $42,915 to cut out of their budget at that time. And then the additional reductions from our $106,000 reduction ask are listed there. And I would imagine those will be on a slide where the Board of Education tells the town, hey, this is how we already cut our budget. And these are all things that were needed at the beginning, but we're going without. So hopefully that will help out with your point of not seeing the original budgets.
Yeah, it just seems hard, I think, to add back in as opposed to not cutting in the first place, right? If you go in and say, this is what our real budget is, this is our best budget, and then the town says, no, we really want to cut, I think that's a little easier to follow rather than we already cut it. What are the chances that we're really anybody's gonna be voting to put that back in, unless that's on the table? Maybe the town can vote to put that 109 back into the boards. I'm not, I'm relatively new to this process, so.
Sure, but I think, if you and other people feel strongly about what you want to have put back in, review those cuts and make your voices known. And then it comes back here, because right now we have 109 surplus going to undesignated fund or elsewhere based upon your feedback. So we would add it back in if there's a huge outcry for it, or leave it out if people are saying, no, we want the reduction. So
Okay.
it's still on the table.
Great, thank you.
That's why there's, the hearing.
Dawn G, I don't want to butcher your last name. Go ahead.
Thank you. G is perfect. Wow, I'm learning a lot too. I'm just following all of this for the first time. What I do know about budgets in the past is that everything goes on behind closed doors. And then when you open it up to the public, the town goes crazy one way or the other. I personally loved the idea of putting it back into both budgets. It's there. Why not put it back? I don't think either board is going to complain that you made us cut and now you're giving it back. I certainly would take it back if I were in their position. I may be a little biased because I'm pro-education. I have a child in the school system. And I know that the more that gets cut from the Board of Education, the more time I'll put in volunteering and donating. So yeah, my taxes may go down, not $70 because my house isn't worth that much. But I know that my back to school supplies last year cost $30. I have one child. They may go up if I'm called on to fill the Board of Education's needs. I'm sure most of you know that this $120,000 playground was built by volunteers, mostly parents in the school. They wouldn't have had to have done that had there been money in the budget. I don't think you're going to find a group of parents to build a walking truck or whatever. Maybe you will. I would challenge you to find volunteers to meet those kinds of needs. I just know that the money I save in taxes, I don't know, but I feel like the money I may save in taxes is going to go towards spending for my child's education out of pocket. So I will definitely be at any meeting. And as you know, the parents of our schools love our schools and they'll be there in mass. Appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. No further public comment. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Gary. Dan.
Same two names all the time. Thank you.
I imagine if there's are there any opposed to adjourning? Passes 6-0.
Thank you, Mike.
Paul, feel better.
Thanks, pal.